Yeah, so this is not so much news as more as an interesting discussion. I was doing my daily reading today, and I came across a post over on Medium under the publication JavaScript Scene by Elliott, and he had originally written an article a couple of weeks ago that had the doom and gloom headline that native apps are doomed. And it was basically explaining why he was no longer going to be developing native apps, and he was going to be developing progressive web apps. And the article that I came across today, which Brian's got up on the screen, which he published, was the part 2 of that idea, which basically explains why native apps are doomed. And to back things up and to explain the difference, so native apps are the Android apps. So we go into Google Play Store, you choose install, it installs the native app. You have an icon on your home screen, it loads the APK. That is a native application. That idea was introduced originally by Apple shortly after the iPhone launch, not at the iPhone launch, which I'll get to in a moment. And that has what's driven the app economy and the app marketplaces that we deal with for the past nearly 10 years now. A progressive web app is the idea that the web has evolved to a point where you can develop applications that operate off of a web page on a mobile device that run just as seamlessly and just as well as a native app. And in fact, what Eric explains in his article is that there's several compelling reasons why you should stop developing native apps and start developing progressive web apps. Mainly when you develop a native app, we talk about this a lot, you're developing for 3 platforms. You're developing for Android, you're developing for iOS, and you're also developing for the web. With progressive web, you just develop it once and it works on all 3 of those devices. He further goes into the article with some more detail about the degradation of the user experience on the app install process. For example, it takes 6 clicks to install an app, and people give up after every click. And so you get 100% of your audience at that first click. You might end only up with 20% of users who see it all the way through. Additionally, some startling stats in this article, native apps are saturated to the point where 60% of the apps in the Google Play Store have never been downloaded. Like, think about that.
That's a crazy number right there.
It's not that they 60% haven't been used or only have a certain amount, just have never been downloaded at all. Additionally, statistics have been trending, and I've been tracking this for a while for some of my day job work. Statistics have been trending to the point where users aren't downloading new apps at the rate that they used to. On average, the average mobile user downloads 5 new apps a month, which is a very, very small number. And 80% of those people who do download the app don't become active users. And that by active user means somebody who returns to the app and uses it often. And then furthermore, it gets into, well, everyone says, well, you can make money with in-app purchases, and that's where you can do it. Except that we all know that in-app purchases, Apple and Google both take a cut from that, so the developer loses a little of it. But additionally, 94% of app revenue comes from just 1% of the publishers. Like, think about that. That's crazy. And so it really begs the question as to why are we dealing with native apps when the numbers are so off, and then using progressive web apps now that the HTML on the web has evolved to a point where you can use OpenGL for games, where you can do a lot of this, material design has helped evolve interface design and responsive layouts and all that sort of stuff, so that people are able to access web apps via a browser versus versus a native app. Now, what's interesting is that, and I said I'd go back to it, when the iPhone originally launched, Steve Jobs actually said the vision is we've got these apps that we've made, but other developers will make applications that will work out of Safari. They'll be web apps, and that's how it will work. And that lasted a very short time. And for whatever reason, they opened up the platform and allowed independent app developers to start creating apps. And then that led to the App Store, and that led to the whole gold rush of apps. And that got us to the world that we're in today. It could be argued that Steve Jobs, one of his last, kind of visionary kind of prophecies was the fact that native apps would not be good for mobile devices, and actually progressive web apps would be the way to go. He was just 10 years ahead of the pace. So Yasmine, you have an opinion on this, and I know that your day job has you in the weeds on apps. So what did you get a chance to read this article? What do you think of this position?
I did. Yeah, you're right. For a living, I'm a UX designer for a shop that builds native apps, and yes, we build web apps because we have to have some form of like desktop solution, and so that's how we do that. But for the most part, we're really focusing on building native apps, and like I totally agree with a lot of the things that they're saying. That discoverability is probably one of the harder things. Like think about it: if you get a link on Twitter and you open it up and then you get this large banner that says, hey, open this up in our Android app. You have to go install it. And if you have it installed, then it'll open it up in the Android app. If not, you have to go to the Play Store, and then you have to click install, then you have to wait for it to install, and then you have to open it up, and then sometimes they'll ask you for a login. So there's like all these barriers if you really just wanted to read an article or see something. So I totally get that. Like for that, it's just like, for some instances, it makes more sense to just build a more robust web app, or that you can use as something that you can save to your home screen. But I think, and I know we're going to be touching on this a little bit, but like I think to answer that, I think instant apps is something that can be really useful. So one of the things at Google I/O that was introduced by Ali Powers was instant apps. So this gives you the ability to stream native Android apps on your phone without actually having going to the store, downloading, going through that whole process. It like automatically streams it almost like if you were opening a web app. Now this is really cool because in a lot of instances, you don't actually want to download a full native app for something that you just want to use it for just a second. For instance, I was in California recently, and I had to park in a lot of places, and a lot of times they asked me, hey, download our parking app so that we can get you all set up and save your spot.
The pay by phone app, right? I know that app very well.
Yep, that one, exactly, yep. And I guess at least it's the same mapping in like all of California, it appears. Like we kept on running into it. But I was like, okay, maybe I was like, all right, I'll download the app so that in case we were like on the beach, in case we want to spend more than a couple hours, we can update our time on the phone and don't have to come back. Well, I was like downloading the app, and then they asked me to set up an account. And I mean, the process was pretty excruciating that my husband was just like, please just let me put the card in here and like get us a few hours and be done with. And so I was like, okay. But think about it. If you had the like NFC, even just how the example that they gave at Google I/O is you put your phone on it, tap, boom, brings up all the things. You're able to hopefully use your Google account, and you're able to use Android Pay to pay and not have to like get another credit card inserted. That would be pretty amazing. So I think there's definitely a lot of things to say about the article in terms of, yes, it is a pain to download an app. I would agree with that. But I think what the native app can give you, like integration with Android Pay, being able to have more, contact with your device and utilize a lot of that stuff provides a benefit. But I think we're going to see a huge impact with instant apps. That is, if developers actually start implementing it, that would be pretty positive.
Yeah, and you're right. I mean, we haven't really seen the impact of instant apps as of yet, but I still see that kind of. I mean, it's still working off of the native app. That's addressing the install fatigue and the issue there. But I've been a longtime proponent of the web, especially once I started seeing the direction HTML5 was going in, and now the fact that within Chrome itself, you have the ability to access the camera, work offline. I mentioned use WebGL for 3D gaming and things like that. Google is building hooks for Android Pay and all this sort of stuff within Chrome. And so the idea being that it's kind of like anything you can do, I can do better. That kind of that Broadway song. The web is evolving to a point where that stuff is becoming more of a reality. And then again, to go back to the article, he shared a couple of examples of companies that had gone the progressive web app route, and some of the numbers are hard to argue. I mean, the Weather Channel launched a progressive web app across 178 countries, and they saw an 80% improvement in load time. They were able to add push notifications thanks to the changes in Chrome and all that sort of stuff, so that mobile web users could still get notifications like a native app. And they said within 3 months, almost 1 million people opted into those push notifications. So I think it's really interesting. I mean, I don't know. I mean, I think a part of me, it's funny because I have a developer friend who is making his own applications and all this sort of stuff, and he refuses to do anything within native. He's doing everything on the web because he's like, why do I want to waste the time having to develop and debug across 3 platforms when I can do it once and everyone can get it? It just seems like a no-brainer there. And I think the time saving becomes the biggest argument in favor of it.